Namaste, everyone. I welcome all of you on behalf of Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center and on behalf of Belu Mehraji AuroBharati to this discourses which are happening under the title called Kala Evam Adhyatm. And we are having guests which are, regular guests with us. I welcome especially all of you here. Let me introduce our guest today, Vladimirji. He is a director of research at Labras Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, USA. We have Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, USA, a sister concern, and Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, India, and Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, USA. Vladimirji holds master degree in general and theoretical linguistic and Sanskrit language and literature from Petersburg State University, and he has done PhD in Indian philosophy from MS University of Baroda. His doctorate thesis was the Vedic vision and the concept of Agni in the Rigveda in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Vladimirji is a scholar and instructor of Sanskrit and Sanskrit literature, and educator in Vedic and Vedantic studies. He is aligned with various educational institutions across the world, including Indian Psychology Institute, Pondicherry, International in Integral Studies, New Delhi, India, Auro University, of course, and Auro Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and many others. I welcome you, Vladimirji, to this series of discourses, Kala Evam Adhyatm. It's wonderful to see that you are studying Indian literature and Sanskrit studies. It's amazing, and I really, from bottom of my heart, I welcome you. I just, give a little brief idea about what today discourse is. It is focusing on art as the highest form of spiritual realization. According to Bharat Muni, the pleasure of art is to provide an aesthetic experience that evokes emotional responses in the audience and ultimately leads to their spiritual upliftment. He believed that art has the power to reveal the essence of human emotions and experiences and to create the deep connection between the artist, the audience, and the divine. And if you listen to Abhinav Gupta, who was 11th century Indian philosopher and aesthetician, who was one of the most prominent scholar to expound upon the theory of rasa in Indian aesthetics, he justified the theory of rasa by providing detailed analysis of the nature of aesthetic experience and relationship to human consciousness. And today, Vladimirji will, take us to the journey of what is art, how Sri Aurobindo talks about art, including Bharat Muni and Abhinav Gupta. Thank you, Vladimirji, for being with us, and I welcome you again. Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kiranji. Thank you, everyone, for attending this and for giving me opportunity to speak on this profound topic. First thing I want to say that I will not go into the details of the system proposed by neither Bharata nor Abhinava Gupta. I will take their framework and will try to go deeper into the sense how literature is reflecting this profound idea. And what is all this about? What is art about? What it is kind of doing to us? Why do we have this artistic kind of approach to knowledge? It is needed for refinement of ourselves. And what is this refinement? This refinement of our being is actually the drive towards the manifestation of the divine qualities. Yes, we do not see it directly, immediately, because we are taken by the pleasure, by the aesthetic pleasure, by the enjoyments of senses, which are enjoyed in it. Yeah? When we have a theater or literature or cinema, we enjoy it, we experience it in ourselves. So how this experience comes into being? How come that we watching movie, especially Indian movies, we can be so sad, so happy at the end, yes, and crying and laughing and jumping. And so what is really happening? And so, or we read some literature. I was mentioning before that when the greatest experiences I had from reading Ramayana, because when you read Ramayana and you come across those descriptions or those relations of beauty and love and deep concern and sacrifice, you are moved to tears. And this type of experience, this type of rasa, you may not have in your own life ever. Your own life can be very boring in comparison to what you read. So back to literature. How is that really happening? How is this experience? How do we get this experience? And actually in the theory, it's quite interestingly described that, you see, according to Natya Shastra, the entertainment is only an effect. It's not really the aim. It's not the goal. Yeah? It's not the primary, at least, goal, yes, of arts. The primary goal is to create rasa so as to lift and transport the spectator towards the expression of ultimate reality and transcendent values. So how is that possible at all? So these experiences we have from reading literature are uplifting us to a higher consciousness. Truly speaking, we start experiencing them in this body, in the embodied state. So they come to us, as it were. They reach us, not we reach them. They descend into our framework and we start living them. We become them. We become that beautiful action of Rama. We identify ourselves with that action and we become for a moment that, Rama himself in ourselves. We feel the example is lived by us. The quality can be repeated by us. It is attracting us. Sri Aurobindo calls these experiences eternal dharmas, which when we once experience them, we will be always drawn to them, to experience them again and again. If we truly experience courage in ourselves, or we are drawn to the beauty of generosity, yes, or to the beauty of perseverance or gratitude, we see the gratitude, we experience the gratitude, then that experience is marking up something in us and we want to experience it again and again. We are looking for it because the delight it generates is enormous. This is the truth. The presence of the truth is resulted in the delight. So this is the idea, the general idea of the experiences. And of course, we know the all 9 rasas, 9th rasa added by Abhinavagupta. Originally, there are 8. And rasa itself is the product of bhava, according to the theory. And it's quite interesting because bhava is something totally internal, whereas rasa is experiencing that particular state. That experience, kind of tasting this state which is generated, is rasa. And interestingly, in the theory, it is said that rasa is produced by 3 fundamental major bhavas, yes? So the production of rasa, let's look into that. That is vibhava, anubhava, and vyabhichari bhava, So what is interesting here is that Vibhava is something which is internally, it's the cause which caused us to have that particular state of consciousness, or that bhava. It's the condition which excites that, so to say, and cause of emotion. What could be the cause of emotion? We will look into it in a minute. So there is a cause of emotion. There is some kind of intent of particular emotion, that bhava. Then anubhava is very different. It is that which is anubhava, which follows bhava. Basically, this is that very rasa, experiencing that particular state. And vyabhichari bhava is going out, so to say, expressing it. It's kind of, what do you call it? Imitating it, as it were. Presenting it, presenting, this is a good word. So we have three movements. One is the cause of bhava, then experiencing that bhava within ourselves, and then presenting it. These three movements, and it is amazingly corresponding to the three semantic values. In semiotics, we have three major branches: semantics, syntactics, and pragmatics. And if you look into this, you will see that the first one is really the meaning which we will have to experience. Syntactics is formation of it into the form which we may experience inwardly, and pragmatics is application of it in the wider context. So this movement of meaning is found the same way in the literature. Yes? And today I will speak on Svadhyaya, because Svadhyaya is built on the same idea. Svadhyaya is depicted in Taittiriya Aranyaka. There is the whole chapter on it, second chapter on Svadhyaya. And maybe, since I'm dealing today with literature, maybe I will make a projection. It will be helpful. Otherwise, there is a lot of text and it is quite tough to follow. Do we have some question and answer session or something? Or yeah,
I think once you finish, we will have a question answer. But if you are comfortable, if somebody wants to ask, and if you are comfortable in between,
I'm very comfortable. You can interrupt anytime you have a doubt or something. It must be done, because then we should be on the same page. Yeah.
Right. So we'll continue, though if anybody wants to ask any question in between, just, raise the, that, there is a reaction box or somewhere you raise a hand, and we will communicate to Vladimirji.
Right. I do not know how deep I want to go with all this, but because of time factor. But truly speaking, maybe I will jump straight into another presentation, which will give the result of what I want to say. And I will start from the top, from the outcome to the nitty-gritties, if we have time. If we don't, we can stay with the outcome and discuss the issue, which is very profound. So let me do another projection then. Wait a minute, 1 second. Sorry. Okay, here it is. So if we look at, this is the scheme which explains actually the whole vision of Kashmirian Shaivism, and also not only, but not only Abhinavagupta, but in every way, even Saussurean vision of the sign and many more approaches. We will see here in Svadhyaya, we will see the whole theory of rasa. It's how our consciousness functions. Yes? So our consciousness has two major fundamental approaches to reality. It is seeing and hearing, and then one more touch in between, as it were. So, or nama and rupa, how the Brahmanas and Upanishads speak about. Nama, name, and rupa, form. Artha and shabda, because I'm dealing with literature here. Shabda is the word, artha is the meaning of the word. Or if we don't deal with the literature, it will be just the opposite. Artha will be the form, rupa, and shabda will be the nama, meaning. Yeah? So if you see, they are one and the same on the highest level. The meaning and the form are the same on the transcendental level of consciousness. Yes. On the supramental level, they are one and the same. On the overmental, they start to split. There is a delay between the form and the meaning, recognizing the form. And so paravak, on the level of paravak, artha and shabda are one and the same. Yes. At the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word and God were one and the same at the beginning. This is the beginning, the top of beyond manifestation. But then on the level of formation, when this meaning wants to be expressed, it comes down as a lightning, yes, as a pashyanti vak. And so that lightning is being generated in our consciousness as a aha moment. Aha, I know what to do. I don't have yet means, but I received the vision. I know where to move, what to do, and so on. And then this aha moment has to be dressed or formed into the form. It has to be formulated in the language which we already know, by which we operate, in order to explain it to our surface being. Our surface being operates by language, and language is explaining to it the intention of that aha moment which we're already experiencing. We already know, but we didn't yet express it properly, that we would know it better and we would be able to communicate it to others. So we come to the level of Madhyama Vak. And Madhyama Vak is operating on the level of syntax. It dresses the intention into the language, into the text. And the text conveys the intention of Pashyanti. It's quite obvious, it's clear, those who studied this. And then finally, we express it, we cast it out. And that is why Karivak, we speak it out in time and space. And interestingly enough, so the form, the rupa, is manifested in terms of objects or in terms of written words or spoken words, have their form, and the words manifest their own reality, so to say, meanings. Come as the language or the text, here the object which is being described. So the object and the meaning of the object, the linguistic reality and the objective reality coexist on the same plane. That's why we have total correspondence between what we say and what we deal with, yes? It's quite interesting. This cup, I know that it is a cup, the word, I can write a cup and I can see the cup, So the full correspondence, but they are totally two different separate realities. So these two different realities are manifested from Nama and Rupa, or Chit Shakti, let us say. Shakti manifests the object of sense, and the Chit manifests the meaning of that object of sense. So we have Chit Shakti, which is operating on two levels together simultaneously, that every object has the meaning. It's meaningfully related to other objects. Interestingly, that Abhinavagupta also tells us that on the level of Madhyama, finally, the two split into ahanta, subjective perception of the thing, that means the meaning, recognition of the meaning, and idanta, thisness of the object. So thisness is objective formulation of the form, ahanta, subjective understanding of that form. Formation of sounds and formations of images is taking place within this process of manifestation. Now, why am I saying all this? Because this is the outcome of my talk. But what is interesting here, that you will see the whole process of seeing and hearing. Yes? Seeing is the form, hearing is the understanding of the form. Apprehensive cognition and comprehensive cognition. They are both going together and manifest the world. Now, here, this apprehensive and comprehensive cognition is seen in the Brahmanas as manas and vak, yeah? Whereas manas is the heaven, vak is the earth. And so manas and vak put together generate the experience, that very experience we were talking at the beginning about. I have a sense of love, a sense of joy, a sense of hatred, fear, disgust. All those senses are being generated and triggered by these two movements of consciousness, Chit Shakti, Nama and Rupa. So what happens when we watch or read the text? So now I'm coming to Svadhyaya. It will explain. Sri Krishna speaks about Svadhyaya in the Gita already. So I will read immediately. Shreyantravyamaya yajna jnana yajna parantapa. I will read the translation. The sacrifice by knowledge is greater than by any material means, O Arjuna. This is what sacrifice by knowledge is, what we are aiming at, to understand how these rasas are being generated within us by reading the text, literature. For all the actions end in the knowledge experience. This is also a very interesting thing, that all the actions are needed. Sarvam karma khilam partha jnane parisamapyate. All the karma, without remainder, ends in knowledge experience. So we need to do things only for that, for receiving that knowledge experience. In terms of rasas, of course, eternal dharmas, we have to build up our being through them. They are the action upon ourselves. And then I will skip the rest because it's about Svadhyaya. He calls it also Brahma Yajna. Jnana Yajna, Krishna calls it, and Taittiriya calls it Brahma Yajna. Svadhyaya literally means, you know what Svadhyaya is. Yes, reading text for oneself. In all Gurukulas, they do Svadhyayas. Yes? Literally means self-learning or reading for oneself. Svadhyaya, Sva-adhyaya. It is a kind of recitation which one does as a means for spiritual quest, searching after spiritual knowledge realization. It was a sacrificial and of meditative nature, different from Padapatha, Kramapatha recitations, which were meant only to preserve Vedic texts. So they were, when you know perfectly the text by heart, you sit down quietly somewhere in the quiet space and read this text to yourself. And then something happens. I do not know whether I want to go through everything, Agnihotra and so on. Some of you may know these things. Ya Evam Veda is very important. All the texts are ending with Ya Evam Veda. The one who knows thus, he gains the fruit of the sacrifice. Why? because reading the text was equated with performing the sacrifice. Reading and understanding the text. I will come to it in a minute. Aitareya Brahmana 25:7 depicts the structure of the Vedic ritual Agnihotra. So there are three priests, Hotara, Dvari, Udgatar, and they recite texts from Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and Samaveda, and they are distributing their presence onto the earth, air, and heaven, respectively. So Rig Veda for earth, Yajurveda for space between heaven and earth, and Samaveda for heaven. So three fires, three priests simultaneously make oblation in through three fires and recite texts from three different Vedas. There is the fourth priest, Brahman, who is silent during the performance, who is observing the action and listening to their words uttered by the other three priests. He doesn't speak a word. He starts the whole ritual with Om, and that's it. His function is to be a witness of all that is happening, and in case of any imperfection, in action or in speech, to correct it in his mind. It's called prayashchitta. Yeah? He makes corrections. Why he corrects in his mind? It's important that he understands the text. He knows all three texts by heart. He knows where the mistakes are made, where the mistakes with the actions are made. He amends them in his mind without saying a word. And then text says, when dakshina and distributed at the end of this performance or ritual, the money or the wealth is given to the priests. Half of it is given to the three priests, Hotara, Dvari, and Udgatar, and the half is given to Brahman alone. So in the text, you read this dispute. So the one who does nothing, says Aitareya Brahmana, gets the same portion of dakshina as the three other priests, reciting and doing all the performance. Yeah? Why is that so? And there is an answer that the text that explains that the first three priests represent Vaj, speech, belonging to earth, of which, according to the Vedic texts, Agni is the essence, while Brahman represents Manas, mind, belonging to heaven, of which Surya is the essence, and by speech and mind, earth and heaven, they create the space in between, Prana, life energy, belonging to Antariksha, the middle world, of which Vayu is the essence, that very prana, that very rasa, which we experience, is being generated by the two. Therefore, says the text, Vayu Pavamana is yajna. So the sacrifice is happening within our rasa field, where we experience all these eternal dharmas. We are charged with the spirit in this form of manifestation in the pranic world, in the world of manifestation. So I will skip, it's a known thing. So Svadhyaya technique, it's quite interesting. The same ritualistic structure is maintained in Svadhyaya, and that is what Taittiriya Aranyaka describes, where the reader of the text, which he knows perfectly by heart, utters it as if mechanically, automatically, while his other part, manas, mind, is observing the flow of the words and being detached from the active formulation of the text, becomes simply a witness of the text, like the Brahman priest in Agnihotra. When these conditions of the sacrificial act are maintained, then the reader himself becomes the altar. And in this way, he unites and becomes one with three levels: heaven, mind, earth, word, and space in between, breath. What is happening in this is we receive experiences. We know it when we read Savitri to ourselves. Why do we read something we know by heart? Why do I recite the poem which I know by heart? I do it to myself, to receive the rasa of it, to receive the experience of it. And we do it all the time. And I know it by practice over many years, over many decades. When you recite Upanishads, which I know by heart, many of them, or Vedic texts, hymns to yourself, so then this magic happens. You receive the state of consciousness which gives you another understanding of the world and yourself. It is the major concept of all Indian civilization. It is built on it. This knowledge was, known to the ancient rishis. This is Aitareya Aranyaka. I will skip this. I will come straight to so the Swadhyaya is done for the sake of union of Agni, Vayu, and Surya. These are three essences of earth, space in between this pranic, rasa, and Surya as the meaning. Tasmat svadhyayo dhyetavyo yam kratum adhite tena asyeshtam bhavati agnervayuradityas sayujim gacchati. Therefore, svadhyaya should be learned for whatever he reads about any action. By that reading, he fulfills the desired and moves towards union with Agni, Vayu, and Aditya. That explains us why literature was so important in India, yes, and why Ramayana has such a huge impact on me, on my consciousness, and changes me dramatically when I read it or listen to it. Sayanacharya speaks about three types of sacrifice. The sacrifice of three kinds: by bodily action, that's what we do in our life; by word, what we speak; and by mind, what we understand. There is no discussion how it is done by the word, for it is understood. But when the reader reads also the meaning of the words, when in the moment of the reading, the mental kind of sacrifice is following automatically, and even if there is no bodily action occurring in the performance, it does not matter at all. That's what Sayana says. Only the one who by prescription is to perform the bodily part of the sacrifice should do it. Otherwise, any other one gains the same fruit of the sacrifice by reciting the text of it. Thus, the reader moves towards the union with Agni, Vayu, and Aditya. So reciting the text and understanding the meaning of it, these two polarities generate the double turbulence between heaven and earth. Between Surya and Agni, this Vayu appears. This tension, this emotion, feeling, bhava, and then this bhava turns into rasa, which we experience, and then we perform it or emanate it. I will not go through all the sacrifices for the sake of time, but what is interesting is that Brahma Yajna is considered to be the highest form of the sacrifice, where one reads even one verse from Rigveda, Yajurveda, or Samaveda to oneself. It is also said in the Taittiriya Aranyaka section on Svadhyaya that it is by Svadhyaya, as a sacrificial act done by rishis, who by desiring the sacrifice, the embodiment of the Supreme received it. So Svadhyaya is depicted as in the myth. Sorry, I will read the whole thing. Svadhyaya is depicted in the myth of Taittiriya Aranyaka as the sacrificial act done by rishis, who by desiring sacrifice, the embodiment of the Supreme, received it from Brahma Swayambhu. And by performing it, they made gods again sinless. Those fallen gods gained their original form, apahata papmana. So where the papman, the papa, their sin was killed, destroyed, who thus went to heaven, svargam lokam ayan, and the rishis themselves joined the abode of Brahman. Brahmanach sayujyam rishayo agachan. They went to the abode of Brahman. So this is the way to recapture the divine in manifestation. So in order to explain the power of Svadhyaya, to explain better why Svadhyaya has such power, Taittiriya Aranyaka quotes from the Rig Veda, Richo akshare parame vyoman yasmin deva adhi vishve nishedu yastanna veda kim richaka rishyati ya ittad viduh ta ime samasata iti. The sacred verses are in the highest heaven, those vibrations, meaning vibrations, where all the gods abide. He who does not know that, what is he going to do with that sacred speech? Those indeed who know that, they are perfectly united. And then it continues, text says later, Yavatirva vai devataha taha sarvaha Veda viti brahmane vasanti. All the gods as they are live in the Brahman who knows the Vedas. So they are being kind of triggered or brought to birth through mantras in our own consciousness as universal powers of the Purusha, powers of consciousness. They are being activated in us, and that's how we know them as Bhava Rasa. They are in the pranic world, generate their presence through these, through the feelings and emotions. Sayana comments that they live in man because he is reciting and understanding the Vedic mantras, Pathataha Arthatascha, from reading and from understanding the meaning. Not only from reading. Reading is not enough. Understanding is required. And since the mantras exist in the speech of the reader, which he knows by heart, and in the mind of the knower, which he understands the text, mantraha sarve adhyetuh vachi, vedituh manasicha vartante. All gods, therefore, also live in him, procreated, as it were, or more precisely, giving a life space by those mantras. Ekasmin mantre ekaiko devata or devaha pratipadyante. So in every moment, in every ekasmin mantre, in one by one mantra, ekaiko, one by one God, devah, pratipadyate, is being generated. So according to the Upanishads, devata or devaha are the faculties of consciousness. We start seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, feeling in the body, those emotions, rasas. The whole world is being rebuilt in us. It becomes us. We become that world, which is generated by that higher consciousness. So here we find, as I think, the final explanation of Svadhyaya. It is to give a space in one's own consciousness for the divine forces, which have to come through the process of sounding the text and observing its meaning silently, giving it a possibility to be fully expressed in terms of the experience. So here I stop, and if you have any remarks, questions, or continuations of this discussion, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Vladimirji. I think you brought totally different perspective in the discussion. I was thinking that you will be talking about Bharat Muni's rasa in a very different way, but you started with and you brought Vak and
well, it was about literature, so I thought,
yeah.
Why not to give something else rather than just to go to the same thing which others already spoke, I'm sure, about it.
No, but I think it's a very thought-provoking presentation today. I still feel that, Beluji, if you convince, I think still we can go ahead with another presentation, because the way you brought this new perspective, I would love to hear from you some examples, because you brought Vedic literature. But if we want to apply and if we want to make it understand, because my aim of this discourse is to bring new generation who can understand what we are talking here. They get influence and they understand that the discussion is not simply seeing the art or for art's sake. It is art for soul. And even trying to understand that Sri Aurobindo talks in conversation, he talks to the disciple when they say that he was talking about Nandalal Bose and Avnindranath Tagore about art, in which he was saying that Nandalal Bose work starts from mental plane of being, and Avnindranath Tagore's work presents a vital plane of being, which we normally don't discuss when we are, critiquing art or trying to understand art. And you brought totally different perspective. I really appreciate the way you presented. I open forum to all of you, and please, if you have any question, ask, and you can always give input.
And also, yes, discussion, remarks, please go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, Bella. Yeah.
Yes, Vladimir. Very good to get this perspective, as Kiranji said. I have one comment, question, kind of like mixed. You explained beautifully the way Swadhyaya works within us, the Vayu space, the Antariksh space, the mid region. And that's where we experience the rasa, the bhav and the rasa, ultimately, that aesthetic, that highest aesthetic experience. So applying this to any work of literature, you were using examples. Once or twice you said something about what Ramayana does to you when you recite it. And I think maybe those examples, what Kiranji was saying as to specific, what kind of recitation of what parts of Ramayana, maybe something about, you mentioned about bravery, sacrifice, beauty, those could be helpful for a larger set of audience. But my question is about, see, when we are reciting Savitri, you gave the example of Savitri or Ramayana, or even for a lot of people like Hanuman Chalisa. I just came back from Varanasi, so I'm like filled, my consciousness is filled with the spaces where Tulsidas ji lived and where he composed Hanuman Chalisa and parts of Ramcharitmanas and all that. So there is certainly a very different vibration, even in those spaces where people of that consciousness lived. In that consciousness, these poems got composed. And same thing could be said about the Vedic composition or what we know of Savitri, why we yearn to experience those 10 minutes in Sri Aurobindo's room where Savitri was composed. So my question is that there is also something about the consciousness from which a text was revealed. Savitri, Ramayana, Ramcharitmanas, Hanuman Chalisa, whatever we have. So there is that aspect of the text itself that creates that rasa, that delight in that middle region when we do a swadhyaya of that, right? Taking it to other kinds of literature which are not composed from that plane of consciousness. How will that transfer? How will, yeah, does it just get reduced to that entertainment, which you said is not the primary object of art at all? And yet that is where all the mainstream art gets reduced to, because it is not produced, it's not coming down from that level of consciousness. So I just was wondering if you can share some thoughts around that.
Yes, yes. You're absolutely right. There are levels, different levels of consciousness from which this action of consciousness is generated, yes? And we perceive it and experience it in ourselves. So there are higher planes from which Savitri or Rigveda was written, or Ramayana. It touches you deeply, or yes, but there are also other writings which are more of the vital nature, more trivial things, and there are stupid films, stupid theater performances, and so on. There are even degrading, very low, from lower kinds, all kinds of paishachic and rakshasic forms. And also, there is also some experience we will have within the vital. Sri Krishna says in the Gita beautifully about this, because this Vayu Pavamana, why it was important for me to mention this, because this is the sacrifice. Yes, Vayu Pavamana is yajna. And that means that everything we experience is the sacrifice, actually. This is ongoing sacrifice. Yes, if you sacrifice to bhutas, Sri Krishna says, you go to bhutas, you become like bhutas. It's the way of becoming. Art is not just for its own sake. It's the expression of some becoming of the being, either spiritual or non-spiritual or bhuta. So if you sacrifice to bhutas, you go to bhutas. If you sacrifice to pitris, you go to pitris. If you sacrifice to devas, you go to devas. That's what Krishna says. And if you sacrifice to me, you come to me. So what it means, sacrifice? Sacrifice means sharing your inner energies with that level of consciousness, generating on the level of energies you have in this pranic world of Vayu Pavamana, purifying Vayu, the consciousness of the higher or lower planes, and that you become. It's a very practical thing. It's more practical than we think. Yeah. So what we think, what we offer, what we feel, whom we are friends with, what are we doing, how we are speaking, what are we thinking, not only feeling, thinking, words we select to speak, to express, that consciousness we express and experience here on the vital level, that we become, we are growing into that being. This is the way to grow into that being. There is no other way to grow into this being. Everything happens through this antariksha. Antariksha is the crack between the worlds through which higher forces enter and lower forces enter. The armies of light and the armies of darkness, and they clash there. They are fighting for our soul as costly prize, Sri Aurobindo says. They want to capture us, because then they can manifest themselves. They can live, they can endure, they can enjoy life through us. So it's our choice what we want to be. And that Vayu Pavamana is the answer, I believe, to all our perception of art, perception of theater, literature, music. There is a form and there is a meaning of that form, and meaning and form generate in us the fundamental change of consciousness.
Yeah.
I think, Veluji, Acha, you go ahead and then I'll introduce. We have.
No, I was just going to say that I think in one of the previous sessions, we were talking about coming up with some kind of like guidelines or something for art-based curriculum. She's not here today, Daljit ji, but she had brought up this point. this idea that Vladimir was speaking of is so important in terms of what kind of artistic aesthetic exposure is given to young children, as they're growing up. So that is very important. I just wanted to kind of bring that to our awareness.
Thank you. This is very important. We had Miramukhi. We had Miramukhi school in Aurobindo. My daughter was there for many years, from her youngest age to when she was 14. And that school, they created absolutely beautiful atmosphere. There were only beautiful paintings, colors, sculptures, music. It was like a magic thing. Children didn't want to leave that place. They didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
This is the role of aesthetics, to push us towards our true self.
So today we have with us Ravi Bhushanji, is a professor of English in Namaste Ravi Bhushanji.
Namaste ma'am. Namaste ma'am.
Kanpur Kala.
Good evening.
Good morning, Vladimirji. He is also scholar of Indic studies.
Nice.
Yeah, so we invited him in our Indic study program, and he has also conducted national and international conferences. So welcome Ravi Bhushanji to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. It's a privilege for me listening to the esteemed speaker on an very, very important aspect of life as such. See, Kiran ma'am, just to correct you that I'm not a scholar in Indic studies, but yes, I am a keen, you can say, a learner who really wants to learn something on Indic studies. Now, having said it,
Oh, you're muted.
one is that since primarily I'm a student of primarily I'm a student of linguistics, and somewhere while studying linguistics, I wish to reconcile this language and literature kind of binary. And while doing it, this cognitive semantics comes to my mind. So when I do this cognitive semantics, and especially through epics and scriptures, then this idea of language and thought comes into picture. So I was really wondering how to grapple with this idea of language and culture. There are a lot of experiments done by a lot of scholars from West as well as the East. I'm reminded of the Taittiriya Upanishad, where it is said that language is the mother of thoughts. But at the same time, thoughts are the father of language. In fact, it was said in Hindi that bhasha vicharon ki janani hai, lekin vichar bhasha ke janak hai. So this beautiful, symbiotic relationship between language and thought, that's number one. I think as students of literature and language, we should be, really taking this into consideration when we talk about, life in this aspect, language and thought. That's number one. Number two, like this idea of thought and this idea of sport. I hope people understand sport, right?
Sport, yeah.
So yeah. So when I was, looking at language as an act of communication, then those four stages of language comes to my mind. That pra, madhyama, pashanti, and vaikhari. Those four stages of any act of communication, because this Indian philosophy of language says that the vaikhari, the last stage, the actual manifestation of your thoughts is the last stage. But before that, there are three more stages, pra, madhyama, and pashanti. There also this idea of the original thought and the way it takes a shape in our mind and the way it is manifested through our words, right? That's the last stage. But if as a teacher I could train my students to understand these three stages, which are a preface to the last stage, the actual act of communication, I think would really help as far as their critical thinking is concerned. So I'm relating it with critical thinking while teaching language and while using texts from our own life, like suppose my epics and my scriptures. They could be wonderful resource for us to train them into critical thinking, as well as to make them understand this whole perspective of language and thought. That's one. And so I'm really happy to listen to the esteemed speaker. A lot of things have been I've been informed on a lot of things, and my own understanding has really improved by this discourse. So I'm thankful to the Kiran ma'am and to the Auro University for such a beautiful discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi Bhushanji. Thank you. Your observation and sharing is very important to us. Maybe, I think you would invite you as a guest here in future.
It's always a pleasure.
We have right now. I saw Rumaji. I think right now she is not there. Ruma Chakrabarti is again a good singer and music therapist, and she has intensely worked and she has done lots of research in music. So I just wanted to invite, but I think I am missing her. I don't know whether Rumaji is able to listen to me. But I invite everybody to have some, views and share or question. It's open to all of you, please.
By the way, to this topic, who is father, who is the mother, has changed in time. Yes, in the Veda, we have a little bit different view on things. Yes, we have the Divine Mother, Aditi. She is the one, the source of all the gods. She produced everyone and everything, and all are her children. So it's a bit different view. And in that sense, of course, she is the Word. She is the incarnate Word. Yes, she is the Savitri, the power of the Lord of the Sun. It is she who manifests all. She was one with the Lord, and she, at the beginning, the Word, yes, Word was God, and Word was with God. So this idea, who is the father and who is the mother, is quite interesting, because Sri Aurobindo says in The Secret of the Veda that the Word was a living reality for the Rishi, and actually it generated thoughts. So the thoughts were formulated and pulled out, formed and made by the Word, rather than the Word was the token of the idea. Ideas were generated by the Word. The Word was more creative, more independent power than the thought. And so later it changed. The Word became dependent on the thought. Thought became primer and the Word became secondary. So if we look at the whole span of the development of language, we will see that there was a stage where the Word had more power, and it carried more general significance, less particular, less precise. The precision, the mental precision, came later in time through the structures of consciousness, and developed. Now we are speaking language which is very precise, and in that time they were more kindred roots, and they were sharing their ideas. It was a more living substance of language than it is now. Now we are less creative. We are more formative. We are more using the forms already given to us and kind of recombining them. We are more syntactic in our thinking than semantic. We are not looking for the meaning anymore. We are looking for the form and presentation of the form. So that's the mental structure of consciousness dominates in our time. So to become again a poet, a rishi of that time, you need to discover the power of the word, the sound. The sound has a meaning, a very general significance, a kala, varna, which manifests in terms of words and concepts and ideas, and can be combined and recombined. It's a living force. It's that Savitri, yeah? That the Divine Mother herself, Chit Shakti.
Yeah, very true. I do agree, because even the very word walk is a feminine divine principle in Indian philosophy of languages. It's a feminine divine principle, because the two basic qualifications of walk are Amrita and Akshara, which is indestructible and inexhaustible. Amrita and Akshara. So language has been given that status of true Shakti, and even Kalidas Abhijan Shakuntalam, when he talks of Parvati and Parameshwaran, salutes this idea of walk and earth, means word and meaning. They are inseparable. We have Shabdarth, like they're not separate entities as such. Like Parvati and Parameshwar, Shiva and Shakti, they are two sides of the same coin. And even Ardhanareshwar, for example. And I'm happy that, sir, you mentioned even being and becoming. I think that's a beautiful idea. Even that German philosopher Martin Heidegger, when he talks of this very idea, being with B capital, not B small, being and becoming, in his book Being and Time. And he contradicts his own guru, his own teacher Husserl, and says that he defines being and becoming as the process and being. So I think that was really, really very, very useful for me when you refer to being and becoming kind of thing in the context of this whole idea of consciousness.
Right, rasas, yes. And this is beautiful. Bhava rasa. Rasa is what we experience of that bhava which we carry from within. So there is the cause of rasa is bhava. And the very three bhavas also, very interestingly, semantic, syntactic, and pragmatic approach to meaning, is actually we are dealing with the same framework, within the same framework, only we name it differently in different disciplines. We have to see how consciousness functions. Consciousness is a living power which is manifesting in this particular formation, which our mind may understand. We express it in language for the sake of our surface mind to understand the processes which are very difficult to understand on the surface. Yes. So that's why we use language. That's why we need Madhyama Bhak. Yes. So,
true.
And interestingly, the image that was going on in my mind was like a classical Hindustani music concert, where the alap, when the performer starts with the alap, he is in that pure zone of sound which he's receiving. Even though he has done the rehearsal so many times, he has practiced it so many times, but in that moment of creative in that creative moment, he's receiving it. And the longer the alap, the longer that it comes through that highest consciousness where he is in that absolute creative space. And slowly, when he and the rasik, the audience, are transported to that space, then the form comes, then the composition comes. Whichever composition in whichever raga he's performing, the words come. So it's from pure sound to word, and then ultimately, it will, the other music accompanies. So I was just like transported to that image of what you were just describing, Vladimir, the creative and the formative. The composition is the very formative experience, and that is an important experience. But the audience and the performer both have been prepared for quite a long time as the performer is presenting the alap, which is pure sound, pure sound.
Interestingly, you mentioned this because I was in one of the very famous, forgot his name now because it was many years back, singer, and also he was, and I asked him, He was amazing. And I asked him, because I was interested how we perceive it, how good the music is. Is it really necessary for him to be in that highest state, to receive, to play for himself, that we would perceive it in the highest way? Yes. So that is the whole story of this. This is the same svadhyaya. Yes. If you read to yourself and understand the meaning, something appears, this your fullness of experience, then audience can receive it. And he told me interesting thing, which actually I reconsidered some things about svadhyaya also. He said that not necessarily I'm in the highest state, but the form which I'm playing, raga, which I'm playing, is already embodying that higher consciousness, that if I'm not in the highest state and playing it perfectly mechanically without mistakes, then the audience is a receiver. You see, svadhyaya happens between the audience and the player and audience, instead of player and player. Yeah? So his consciousness. So the perceptor, the perceiving part, is directed towards the audience, and they may get the highest experience. It is interesting because in the beginning of Natya Shastra, it starts with this. You know, the first performance was done for the gods. And it was the drama of the creation of the world, which became the ritual, actually, the sacrifice. The sacrifice is the drama, actually, performed for the gods to enjoy it. That means to generate that particular bhava, which would give them the sense of recreation of the world. So, and that is being recreated in the people who are doing the rituals. That's why people did sacrifices, to receive higher consciousness. And it is described there beautifully that the audience were gods, but then the audience changed, and the audience from the vertical became horizontal. It became towards people. Now people are receiving, comprehending the apprehensive performance of the form. They are comprehending the form now, and the new energy is generated. And you know that in theater it is very important for the artist or the actor to be perceived by the public. Public has to respond, otherwise actors even cannot play, because they rely on that interaction, on that vital exchange, on that bhava being generated. It's amazing because we are having it everywhere. In the music, in theater, in reading books, with oneself. I speak the word and I hear my word at the same time. How to speak and to be conscious of one's speech. These are the fundamental questions of consciousness.
Very nice. Very nice.
I think role of Sahriday is also very important, you know. If audience or listener is not at the same level of consciousness, then they won't be able to receive howsoever beautifully, you know, the person is acting or, you know, singing or dancing, because that person can be in the very divine consciousness, but Sahriday, who is sitting and watching the reader or the listener or the observer, if that person is not at the same wavelength, rasa will not be there. That is what I feel.
And even more than that, you can watch something very ordinary or even mediocre or even stupid, or open newspapers and see there the truth and the divine, because you are in the state which allows you to see, to read in between lines, to see the truth behind the cover of untruth or lesser truth. And so it so much depends on the one who perceives. And one can be to oneself. I can perceive my own words. And this happens all the time. Sometimes you wonder, how is that even possible? That you express the thing you never knew, you know? So now you are wondering about this. It generates in you the new state of consciousness. What was that magic of the word or that vibration which generated in you new understanding? So this is the magic of consciousness, yes, consciousness force, which we find everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for these examples. They are very good.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Ashok and Krishnan.
Any comments are there? Acha. Binduji is saying beautifully expressed. Thanks a lot for enriching discourse. Thank you, Binduji. It's wonderful that you are always there with us, listening to us, and we look forward to your presentation also. I think
Ashokana is wanting to ask something. Yeah?
Ashok, Acha, I'm seeing. Okay.
Shall I?
Yeah, please.
A small anecdote. I came to know, recently I came to know that a mother had recommended to a sadhak to listen to Western classical music every day for some prescribed time. And he did this for his lifetime, for his entire lifetime. Every afternoon he listened to Western classical music after lunch for an hour or so. So it must have helped him in his progress, as mother had recommended. This much I wanted to share.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for this. Yes. This is important. She saw what he needs, what element he needs to correct his own, inner perception, how he can really redirect his being towards the inner truth of himself. So that was the device. These are all devices, we understand, which are pushing us towards the truth of ourselves. Yes? And art is the best form of that. Sri Aurobindo somewhere says that one painting of the painter can be more dear to the divine than the whole manifestation of the universe. Because it's a reflection, I'm paraphrasing, not literally, but because there is a new consciousness embodied in the human being, which may recreate the creation in his own way, see it in his own unique way. And that is really the quintessential purpose of this manifestation. Yes? For him to be able to see his creation and recreate it in his own way and form. This is the purpose of art, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nasa.
Thank you so much, Vladimirji.
Thank you.
Look forward for more session from you also. And thank you, all of you. Juika, Ashima, Pranjal, Nanji, Binduji, Dineshji. Thank you, Ravi Bhushanji and Ashokpanji for coming here and sparing so much time with us. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.